Hello there, horror fans of Fanbacked. My name is Robert Delaro. I'm a horror entertainer and creator of the Binding series. I come here today, first of all, just to say how honored I am to be part of the Fanbacked family and all your amazing projects, and of course one of my idols for many years, Rob Zombie, with his film 31. As I said, I come here with the project The Binding, and what I'm trying to do is gear the backers towards helping me with a short film of this project, which of course I have a crew readily available, people that have worked in commercial film. One of my friends, Oklahoma Ward, who created a wonderful indie called Crawl or Die, which is all over the place, Japan, everywhere. I mean, I've just got a great team to help me. I just need to raise the funds to be able to make this possible. To tell you a little bit about myself, I am a horror entertainer, as I said before. I started out as a columnist about a little over 4 years ago for a minor horror website where I did a bi-weekly column detailing the greatest in horror. That included comics and movies and television. And I did that for a bit and ended up getting really bored with it. And with no real skill, I ended up contacting agents and publicists throughout New York and Los Angeles. Started talking to some of my favorite people. One of them being Michael Rooker of The Walking Dead, another Elvira, which of course is Cassandra Peterson. The list just went on. I ended up going to Facebook and creating a Facebook page for horror fans, cutesily saying I was hiring people, and we just basically posted about horror every day. And that kind of grew the fan base that expanded today. We went from that particular Facebook page to our podcast, which we actually had done 3 times a week with no money attached, just the love of pure horror. And we ended up talking to everybody from Camille Keaton to John Amplis of Martin, Michael Rooker, of course, was on many, many times. We had a huge roster of people come on the show. About 6 months after we did the podcast, we ended up getting discovered by a company called Jackalope Radio. And Jackalope gave us a deal to do our Della Morte's Dungeon of Deadly Delight show on their network. Once we did that, it started to expand after a short amount of time. We were talking to everybody from Doug Bradley to Linnea Quigley to William Sadler to Lance Henriksen. We had a top-tier guest every single week, to the point where we ended up getting sponsors like Bob Kurtzman, of course originally of KMB and his company Creature Core in Ohio. Seven Deadly Clothing was another one. Doug Bradley, of course, Pinhead of Hellraiser, his company Spine Chillers. And we had a little bit more of a following throughout the world at this point. And we just did the show for about 2 years. And I ended up deciding that I wanted to do something different. Instead of talking to people about these projects, I just wanted to kind of do something of my own. And I remember that I created this story about 12 years ago that I thought no one would ever see, no one would ever care to see. And it was called Scorn at the time. I got that manuscript and I ended up writing this particular book, hoping that people would actually care when I put it out. I sent it off to a self-publisher. The self-publisher, of course, published it for me. We had it out for about a good 3 months until I realized that I didn't want to work with this company anymore. I ended up pulling the book. But before that, it was one of the top-selling books they had in probably their 10-year career. I was pretty much hopeless at that point. I didn't know if anybody would ever want it or ever see it again. I ended up talking to a literary agent in Colorado who basically told me she read the manuscript and she absolutely loved it, and if I did not go with a small publisher, I would have went with somebody like HarperCollins, who of course put out Game of Thrones. Pretty distraught by that news. I kept going, and I ended up finding another publisher that didn't really work out, and then I just really decided, just like everything else I've done in horror, I just wanted to do everything on my own. So, continued to hunt, created a script version of this particular story, called it The Binding at that point, which of course this is the book now. So it went from Scorn to The Binding, wrote a script, Ended up talking to a producer and director named Harrison Smith, who had a couple films do very well. One was called The Fields of Cloris Leachman. The other one was 6 Degrees of Hell, Corey Feldman, and his latest was Camp Dread with Danielle Harris and Eric Roberts and Felissa Rose. And he loved the script. He ended up passing it around everywhere he could possibly go. That script ended up in the hands of Lionsgate Films, who of course put out the Saw series. Lionsgate, in their infinite wisdom, had said that the project was too female-fueled, and ended up passing on it. So basically, the book came out as a self-published work. Book did very well. This book sold all throughout Scotland, the UK, India, and this is a self-published work. I've been compared to a young Stephen King. Had everybody read it from Dread Central to Horror Hound to actor friends of mine, including PJ Souls, Eileen Dietz of The Exorcist, Tyler Mane, who of course was Michael Myers in Rob Zombie's Halloween. I've had a lot of people read this book and absolutely love it. The script was the same situation. So, with everything I've done in horror, here we are today to talk about The Binding and why it would be good for you to help out with this particular project. First of all, I think I've created a very solid character in Sarah. Sarah is an 18th century witch who comes back after a spell. The main character, Jason Kane, is actually tricked into reciting a spell, thinking he's going to bring his ex-wife and estranged son back to him, but in reality makes Sarah return through a legacy, and she turns the women of the world possessed and murderous. It's a little bit Walking Dead, a little bit The Craft. We did one short film before for this. It was my first directorial debut. We called it Scorn Broken Visions. It did very well. Actually, it got picked up by FearNet before FearNet ended up getting dropped, unfortunately. And people really loved that as well. So with the book a success, the story a success, of course I come to all of you with the idea of doing another short film, which I would like to, showcase to, of course, the people that need to see it, which of course is the men and women of the industry, but mainly the women of the industry, because the one thing that we're lacking in this particular genre is inequality. And the one thing I really love about The Binding is that there are female characters that are very strong. There's a very, very strong female villain, and you very rarely get to see that in horror. That's definitely something that needs to change in this industry, and I'd like to do that with The Binding short film, hopefully. With The Binding, helping The Binding, there are many perks, of course. We've got t-shirts and hoodies and all kinds of different products, executive producer positions, parts in the film, autographed books of this first book, of course, which is Shade of the Shattered Heart. That's part 1. The second was called Wicked Woman, Wicked World. That's actually out now. These are both available on Amazon. So that's basically it. We just want to create a very solid film of this particular story. And I know for a fact that many horror fans have already loved it. They want to see it happen. And I think as horror fans, if you're a fan of witches and you're a fan of gore, you're a fan of action and drama, I mean, it's all in there. These are very well developed characters, and they would work very, very well on screen. So that's basically it. As I said before, my name is Robert DeLauro. I'm a horror entertainer, and of course the project was The Binding. Take a look at all the perks that I have available. Help a story that both men and women can love in horror. Thank you very much for your support. I hope to talk to all of you soon, and hail Sarah. Let's let her live. All right, in cinematic life. All right, thank you very much. That's it.